So, just as like a topic test, I found something. Well, I came across it actually from class, but I found something that was so disturbing, and I knew about it because we discussed it in Social Determinants of Health. But we came across it again because for class I actually had to watch the documentary. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Bad Blood.
No, I've never actually heard of that.
I hadn't either, so I'm not like totally surprised, but also it's pretty wild. So Bad Blood is a documentary which has clips from interviews from the researchers of I think it's Tuskegee let me just get the right, I don't want to mispronounce this name.
Tuskegee?
The Tuskegee syphilis study.
That's always fun. They took black servicemen in the U.S. military and told them they were going to treat their syphilis, but then actually did other experiments on them.
It's actually worse than that. So the Tuskegee syphilis study, the actual published study, they made it seem like they had, gotten military men. But what they did was they found a poor black community that had a high incidence of syphilis, and they didn't treat them. They told them they were getting treatment. What they were giving them was actually aspirin. So they gave them aspirin for their pain, because definitely they were in pain. And they just tested their blood. And as they were dying, which to me, this was probably, everything they did sucked, but this was probably the worst. When they died, they performed non-consensual autopsies on their bodies. And the nurse who was there was like, I'm sure you can't do this because I'm pretty sure the family didn't authorize an autopsy. And the doctor said, don't worry, just make sure that you can't tell that an autopsy was done, so when the family gets the body back, they won't have any idea.
Good stuff.
How crazy is that? So that's not even what I wanted to complain about, because we agree that is awful.
Yeah.
The researchers said, this is not racist. This wasn't about race. This wasn't a racist study. But you targeted a black community.
But if it were some community that had more agency, they would not have been able to get away with it. So
exactly.
The very fact that they targeted a community, maybe not for race specifically, but they targeted a community that they can't fight back.
Well, exactly. That's the point. Like, they had no, like you said, they had no agency to fight back, but also the general public opinions of these people were, hey, black people are stupid and they're rude and they're poor and they don't know about safe sex. Yeah, no one told them to use a condom because they didn't even know they had syphilis. I can guarantee you, if they thought they were sick with a communicable disease, they probably would have taken better precautions. Also, you can fix syphilis with penicillin. It's a very easy blood test. It's a very simple treatment plan. And it causes serious, serious long-term effects. And they were like, oh no, we needed to do this study to understand the long-term effects of syphilis.
I think they already knew what long-term effects were, considering...
They had an idea.
Like, if you look at old suits of armor, they used to create little special things in the crotch to sort of elongate it so that there would be less material on syphilic penises. So I'm pretty sure they knew the long-term effects of syphilis.
Definitely, 100%.
And studies like that, in particular, the Tuskegee experiments, are the reason that African Americans in general have a problem trusting medical authority. So it's the
would you?
The repercussions are literally still in effect.
Generational. Of course. Like, that's literally, it's probably one of the most sickening things. And the wild thing is, the Victorians knew about the long-term effects of syphilis. Don't tell me that in the 1930s, and the study went on for 40 years. And most of the people all of the people who quote-unquote dropped out died. They actually had one guy who had gotten on a bus. He landed up at a clinic somewhere else. He felt sick, so he went to the doctor, and the doctors were going to see him, The researchers found out that one of their participants was at this clinic getting healthcare, and they flew, like, when I say flew, I don't mean literally in the sky flew, but they drove there as fast as they could, collected this man and brought him back to their clinic and gave him some aspirin and sent him home to die.
Good stuff.
Like, what? But this is what I'm saying. Like, the Victorians knew the long-term effects of syphilis. Like, they already knew. Because, like, if you walked into the brothel and someone was missing a nose, you knew. Stay away from that one. You know? Like, we know the long-term effects. Well, exactly. I mean, you could go just next door, pick another friend. But that was the thing, right? So, we already knew. Like, you didn't have to torture these people. And what really is the worst for me, the guy said that's not racist. And the second thing was this... The researchers were quoted as saying it was absolutely necessary, and if given the chance, they would do it again the exact same way. What?
Yeah, that...
Like, how can you live with yourself thinking like that? But then again, like I said, the people in the bar that they interviewed were like, you know, the blacks don't even turn on their flicker when they're making a turn. I was like, what are you talking about?
That has nothing to do with
What is wrong with you? Like, how... Please make it make sense, because I don't understand how those two pieces connect to each other realistically.
I think they just grasp at anything just to dehumanize the other party and then make it okay for. It's like they don't even do the simplest things that we expect of people in a society.
Like, we wash our hands. Like, yes, I know you know to wash your hands, but you also have access to running water. It's like, people, you can't assume, anyway, it was awful to watch the documentary, number one, but those two things, I couldn't even believe it. Again, this is the 70s when they did these interviews, so this had been okay, they had normalized all of this behavior, it was already okay for 40 years.
Oh, I think it was probably far more normalized than 40 years. I think the fact that it was so normal is how they were able to get away with it for 40 years.
Exactly. And I think this kind of tomfoolery, for, you know, interests of not being rude, like, this kind of stuff still happens. You know, people are still going, oh, let's see how much pain this patient can tolerate. Oh, let's see how much virus this person can tolerate. Let's see how long it takes this person to die.
There's actually a prevalent belief, like well, not prevalent, but it is sort of established among certain people in the medical profession in the States, where they believe that people of color have higher pain tolerances.
There is actually one academic paper. There's an academic paper that says that. I mean, it's been debunked now, and it's definitely been researched and shown to not be true. But this was being taught to medical. It was being taught to medical students.
Yeah, that it's also one reason that the opioid epidemic is generally affecting white communities rather than black ones, because they're like, you don't need the Percocet.
It's not even about the Percocet. It's actually more messed up than that. So number one is physicians are less likely to believe black patients or any members of racialized groups are less likely to be believed by physicians. Women are less likely to be believed, but also they don't believe that black patients can be responsible with high-end narcotics. So they don't give them those narcotics. They're like, yeah, I'll take an aspirin, your migraine will totally go away. It won't. You know, it won't. But they don't do that. But the other thing is, they think that because there is a high addiction rate in white communities, they assume, even though the data says the opposite, they assume that if white people are getting addicted to opioids at a rate of, say, 3%, then they think that number is double for black people. Because, you know, black people are stupid and irresponsible in their eyes. So that's like kind of... It's another downfall, I guess, of the healthcare community. It's like not doing anybody any favors, right? So it's so messed up. It makes me so angry to think about this. So the thing I wanted to say about syphilis, because I like spirochetes. I think they're very interesting microbes. I know it's a weird thing. But the thing about them, that The scientists knew before the experiment started, so they already knew this. Spirochetes are special, and they knew this from studying Lyme disease, because the way that they evade the immune system is by infecting the patient just enough so that they get sick and that the infection can take hold, but they don't spread or multiply fast enough to trigger the immune system. Because if they did trigger the immune system enough, the immune system would definitely kill them. So like that little evolution makes a spirochete type bacteria very dangerous because it just stays in your body, which is also the reason why if you don't treat your Lyme disease, you'll end up with a lot of long-lasting effects that you can't really get rid of. So they knew all of that before they started this. So that was all I wanted to say about this, because it just upset me a lot.
Yeah, I imagine. I imagine so. It's incredibly upsetting.
Well, the documentary was 40 minutes long. It took me 2 days to watch it.
Yeah, it's been a lot
because
of...
you get angry enough, have to walk away.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff lately that comes up. It's like, I can't fucking deal with that right now. I'm gonna watch this later.
Well,
oh god,
I don't blame you. The other thing that I thought would be a fun topic of discussion. I don't know if fun is the right word. But another thing that I thought about when I was just like going through the internet, I don't actually understand what it is, because I knew that there was the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party in Canada, and I'd heard about the NDP. But then I discovered there's actually 3 other parties. Like, am I losing my mind? Was that actually true?
There's a lot of parties. So,
okay.
Federally, there's the Liberals, which are the oldest continuous party in Canadian history. There's the Conservative Party of Canada. There's the New Democratic Party.
Yes.
And there's the Green Party, which has between 1 and 4 seats that they win. I can't remember the number they have right now, but their highest number I think was like 4 seats, and then it quickly went down to 2. And
oh my goodness!
It's basically like Elizabeth May's party, so it's like they're not left enough to be more left than the NDP, so they're sort of in between the Liberals and the NDP, and it's mostly just sort of a personality party, sort of with Elizabeth May in the center. And I believe
that makes sense.
She retired, and then I believe she came back and retook her seat like last year. I don't follow the Green Party very much.
No, that's okay. I was just curious about it.
Then there is the People's Party of Canada, which is the one that basically it was a temper tantrum that
I heard about that, but I'm not 100% sure the details. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Maxime Bernier was a conservative MP from Quebec, and he's this big figure like, oh, the immigrants are ruining Canada, that sort of thing, which is it's like, we need to maintain our own culture, which is very, very odd in my opinion, because like he can barely fucking speak English. So
but it's also like a really bizarre thing for like a Canadian person to say.
Yeah, it is sort of incredibly un-Canadian in a way.
Yes.
But
in every way.
So basically, Maxime Bernier, they thought he was going to become the head of the Conservative Party, but but then he lost by like 1% of the vote, something along those lines. And Andrew Scheer, who became just a nothing leader anyway, because he then lost to Aaron O'Toole, who is now lost to again, and now we have evil Milhouse.
Oh my goodness.
So basically, Maxime Bernier threw a temper tantrum. It was like, I want to start a new party with real conservative values. By real conservative values, he meant me as the leader. So
right.
He ran a bunch of candidates and tried to basically fracture the Conservative Party, but the Conservatives were just like,
No.
we prefer conservatism to Maxime Bernier. So he lost his own seat. And
Oh my goodness.
not only did he lose his own seat, but I believe they're called the Rhinoceros Party. They're like a protest party. They found a guy who was also named Maxime Bernier and ran him in Maxime Bernier's riding to try to confuse people. So
That's hilarious.
There were two Maxime Berniers on the ballot. So
then how do people know the difference? Like,
that was the point.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So just like found another person who had the same name, and we're
they're
like, good
hey,
luck.
do you like this other guy named Maxime Bernier? He's like, fuck no. So they ran him. And
That's so funny.
so
Because that would have made him so mad as well.
yeah, so they have no seats. Because he lost his own seat. So they're basically a nothing party. And
So then what's the point? Like, this is what you were saying, though. There's like 1% of all the political parties is like
he
the
really,
Chris guy.
really, he wanted to become the NDP of the Conservatives. I don't think he had any sort of, I don't think he thought he was going to get like the premiership or the, prime ministership. I don't think he was that deluded. I thought he was going to be able to, I think he thought he could sanction enough seats away from the Conservative Party to be able to be a kingmaker.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think he wanted a little bit of power, because even Elizabeth May fucking gets to have the debates, and she's literally nothing.
Right.
And so he wanted to get up on the stage with everybody. I don't think he had delusions of prime ministership, but I think he wanted to be the one to be like, he just
was
as
Delulu.
important.
He was still a little bit delulu.
Oh, of
like
course.
he was swimming in that swimming pool.
Of course, but he thought he would be able to take a lap instead of
That's so funny.
sink and drown. And
Basically a belly flop.
yeah, so that's
so funny.
basically the parties of Canada. There's one Conservative Party and 3 left of center parties.
Right.
So the Liberals, I think, are sort of shifting further right, and the NDP is, I don't know.
Responding and going further left, but like in a weird way.
Yeah, they're trying to, like, they took any mention of democratic socialism out of their constitution when Jagmeet Singh became the leader. So I
don't understand why they did that.
I think he wanted to style them more as social democrats, so that because like most like old white Canadians are still afraid of socialism and communism. They think it's
because they have a misconception about it.
Yeah, so they there was this two old women actually in our old building that we were talking to them, and they're just like, oh, we don't like Trudeau because he's a socialist. It's like, oh, I would love it if he were, but he does absolutely not. That's not his whole
like, cite
shtick.
your sources, because I'm pretty sure I can point to many reasons why he's not a socialist.
And losing my train of thought. It's kind of funny too is in our old neighborhood, basically they were really pushing for the People's Party, because another sort of added layer to complicate things is that federally there are all those parties.
Because we need more layers of complication.
Yeah, because federally those are the big parties, because there are still smaller parties, but they're nothing. So like the third largest party, for instance, in Canadian Parliament is the Bloc Québécois. So basically a regionalist party, because Trudeau again just negged on his promise to what's the word? Basically instill voter reform.
Oh, really?
So he was saying that he would institute a proportional system in Canada.
Right, so the cities who have the largest number of people get the most say, like that?
Sort of. Like, I think he was looking for, like, sort of a New Zealand type thing. So I believe I forget what they're called. I have a tab open, I think, here. Additional member system. So basically, you would have, like, the specific voting districts. So then you would vote for your candidate in your riding.
Yeah.
So you say, like, I want the Liberal candidate. And then so first past the post, whoever gets the most votes becomes the winner, basically. So that's how it works in most Westminster systems. That's how it works in the US. That's how it works in Canada.
You're the first person to explain it to me, because you know how many people I've asked, like, how does it work? And they're like, oh, well, it's really complicated, and then fail to explain it. So thank you for that. Now I understand.
Well, so basically in New Zealand, they have a thing that their system works that way for like each individual seat in their districts. But what they also have is sort of a secondary list. So they'll vote, like, let's say they'll strategically vote and say, I forget what the parties are in New Zealand. It's Labour and National, I think, are the left and right party. And then there's like a populist right of center party run by, I forget what the party's called. New Zealand First, maybe? Something like that. It's by,
I have no idea.
Name? Winston Peters, I think, is his name. Anyway,
I mean, I can Google it if you want.
It really doesn't matter. I'm literally doing it right now. Yeah, Winston Peters. He is currently the deputy prime minister because they have a coalition between Labour and it is New Zealand First. Okay, so
good job.
Cool. They also have a Green Party as well. So, like, let's say you really like Labour, but National's probably gonna win. Or let's say, better example. You really like the Green Party. The closest that you're going to get is the Labour Party in your riding, basically. Well, New Zealand doesn't have ridings. In your district.
Yeah. Well, so South Africa, we have districts as well. So when somebody said to me riding yesterday, I was like, what's a riding? But now I understand it's a district.
It's just the Canadian version of district. So basically, like, let's say National is close in the polls to winning.
Okay.
You like the Green Party, but Labour is the only way that National's not going to get that seat. So you'd rather not have National in, and Labour is like a second choice. So you'll vote in your district for Labour, but then under your party vote, you'll put Green. So if your party gets 5% of the vote, then they will get the remaining seats. So there's like, I think it's 25 or 30 extra seats.
Okay.
That aren't tied to any district. So then each party will have like candidates that'll fill those seats. So basically you can win some of those seats if your party gets 5% of the vote, and then proportionality, how much each party has gotten, will be awarded those seats based on that proportionality.
Okay, that makes sense. I understand.
So, if that were the case, then the NDP would be the third largest party and not the Bloc Québécois. Because the Bloc Québécois is a regionalist party that couldn't give a single fuck about anything outside of Quebec.
But also, like, the Bloc Québécois, they don't even want to be Canada.
I mean, it's complicated. So that's
a discussion for another day.
Well, I think in a perfect world, they definitely want Quebec to be its own country, but they're sort of working within this sort of framework.
So didn't Justin Trudeau say that he was going to do that, and then
he promised it? So I know quite a few NDP voters who basically abandoned the NDP when he first got in 2015 and voted Liberal specifically because he promised that, and then he did absolutely nothing with it. And then he had the gall at the next election to say, "Hey guys, it's still on the table."
It's still on the table? Like, you had 4 years.
Yeah. And yeah, so basically he just promised it and then just didn't deliver at all. And yeah, so basically federally, there's the Liberals, the NDP, the Conservatives, Bloc Québécois, and the Greens.
Okay.
And I did just look it up. The Greens have 2 seats now. There are 2 vacant seats.
But they're also, like, not actually doing much for climate change.
No, but Party. I mean, there are just 2 of them, to be fair.
Yeah, that is fair. I didn't know about the 2 seats, but that is fair.
Yeah. And so there are also 3 independents, 2 vacant seats, 32 Bloc Québécois, 117 Conservatives, 25 NDP. When we first moved to Canada, it was 42 NDP.
Wow, that's a huge reduction. Like, if you think about how many people sort of have to disagree with you.
Well, it was left over from the Orange Crush. So in 2011, maybe? I can't remember. It was either... I don't remember. Let me see. When was that? 2011. Okay. So basically, so how would I put that? Almost 100 years ago, there was a Canadian author. What was his name? George Grant, I think? Anyway, he basically wrote... He was a conservative. He wrote a bunch of books on Canadian politics and things of that nature. It was George Grant. Look at that.
Look at you and your good memory. Jeez, I'm impressed.
Fire. So
yeah.
And don't quote me on this one, but basically he wrote The Lament of a Nation, which, if I remember correctly, was basically talking about how Canada is just becoming very Americanized and is getting absorbed by American culture and is like getting torn away from traditional conservative Tory values and Canada's British culture, which
Canada doesn't have British culture. I mean, not that I've observed.
It did.
Oh, okay.
When he was alive, because you got to remember he was born in 1918, and before then, Canada was very much part of the Commonwealth realm. Most people here of European background were mostly of British extraction until a lot of Ukrainians and other Europeans moved in. So so this guy, very conservative. That guy has a nephew that I didn't remember the name of, so I just had to look it up. He's an actor.
Yeah.
His last name is Michael Ignatieff. His family, his father's family are like nobility from Hungary.
Oh wow.
Or Russia. I can't remember which one, but was an actor that in like an academic. Was it actor or author? I can't remember which one. Anyway, he had some sort of, background that was not political.
Okay.
But
not really had any business.
Yeah, so his uncle basically was just a famous political philosopher, and I don't know if that maybe was the reason he got into politics. But anyway, he became the head of the Liberal Party, and everyone fucking hated him.
Oh, really?
So he had very little charisma. He spent a lot of his time living in Europe and then in the US. They would play interviews of him saying "we" when he was in the US, like, how Canadian is this guy? And he became the head of the Liberal Party. And he performed so poorly in the 2011 election that the NDP temporarily became the opposition party. Like, he did so poorly that he pushed the Liberals, who are sort of some people joke that Canada's sort of a one-party state. It isn't, but they joke
No,
because
it's
the
not.
Liberals are in there so often.
Oh,
And they spend
okay.
so much time in there while they are in there. So he basically
Like,
took...
that should tell you something, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, that should give you some information about what the people want.
Yeah. But he basically tanked their numbers and brought them to the third party. And, I really truly believe that Jack Layton, who was the leader of the NDP at the time, would have won the prime ministership if he didn't, get pancreatic cancer.
Right.
His wife is now the current mayor of Toronto.
Oh, yeah, she's awesome.
I mean, she's a lot better than the alternative. I don't know much about her to say she's awesome. But I assume
like her
the widow
policies.
of Jack Layton would be much better than fucking John Tory.
Yes,
The man
agreed.
who is so much of a Tory, it's literally in his name.
Yes. But listening to her speech when she got elected and listening to what policies she wants to implement, and yeah, it definitely sucks that she's putting up some taxes, but as she said, the previous administration put Toronto into pretty severe debt, and she's going to have to repair that in some way. It sucks, but here we are. The point is she has a plan, and that's the thing that I actually like about her.
Yeah, and it
The
seems
part
like
with the plan.
conservatives generally don't like having plans and policies and just...
No, because then they have
Fly
to
by
follow
the seat
through
of
on
their
what they
pants.
said. Like,
Yeah.
then somebody would have proof that they said something. Imagine if they wrote everything down.
I really just don't feel like they have any real ideas, and they just are running purely on feelings rather than
Or not even feelings,
looking
just
at
like,
a situation.
hey, I'm just going to say the opposite of what the Liberals say, because I know that if you're a conservative person or if you subscribe to that belief system, it doesn't matter what a feminist, liberalist, whatever says.
Gotta
You just
own
have
the
to disagree
libs.
with them.
Just have to
Well,
own
that's a-
them.
Exactly, you just got to own them. You don't even have to agree, you don't even have to be right, you just have to say something that disagrees with whatever they say. I don't know if you've heard of a character named Chris Sky.
No.
Okay, so count your lucky stars if you've not come across that guy. He's special. He was running for mayor of Toronto, and he's not a nice guy at all. And he's like, the stuff that he was talking about, all his policies and his things that he was going to do when he's the mayor, he was in the bottom 1%. Like, he didn't even get enough votes to represent a percentage on the scale.
I
He
know who he is. I just looked him up. I know who he is. I just didn't remember his name.
Well, why
Oh,
would you?
God.
That's like not something that needs to take up your precious memory space. The point is, this guy didn't even really have any real ideas of his own. He was just clearly saying stuff that other people he'd spoken to were yelling about. So this guy was in Florida. He oh my goodness.
He looks
He
like
made-
a Floridian.
So
He-
he made this TikTok. Okay. He was in Florida. I think it was an Instagram reel. I think that's what it's called. The video thing that you can play on Instagram. It's a reel, right? So he made this video. He's walking through the streets of Florida, and he walks by this really beautiful woman, and she like turns around and looks at him, and he sort of smiles back at her and waves, and she says, I just want to tell you that you are so hot. And I'm like, okay, firstly, I know this did not happen. Like, please, bring me your receipts, because I can tell you that did not happen. But anyway, maybe it did. Different strokes for different folks. I think he was married at some point. But
Still is, it looks like.
I don't know. Whatever. Good luck to them. Apparently his wife drinks the Kool-Aid too. This is all secondhand information, the wife drinking the Kool-Aid part. But this video that he made, he turns to the camera and he tells the story about this woman who turns around and tells him that he's so hot. He's like, if I was a woman and a man said that to me, this would be all over the internet because of how problematic it is. Like, you can't tell a woman that she's beautiful. Like, no, you can tell a woman that she's beautiful. You just can't be gross about it. Because there's a difference between wow, I really like your haircut, or that shade of lipstick really complements your skin tone, or whatever. Like, you can say stuff like that, or that dress is really beautiful on you, but not like, oh, you're so sexy. Okay, now I'm uncomfortable and I feel threatened by you because you're a man who, you know, historically has more power than me. That's the problem with that. But of course, homie is pretty tone deaf, so he goes on in his reel about the double standards of society. And I was like, wait, you want to talk about the double standards of society? Why are you standing on a soapbox, sir? Anyway, I just thought that was funny because this guy is like unhinged, and he was running for mayor.
Apparently, he's been has had criminal charges.
Yeah,
because he's uttered death threats for Doug Ford. So, you know, everyone has their positive qualities.
If that's what you want to call it.
But anyway, so yeah, 6 or 7 tangents away from where we started.
I'm so sorry. Yes,
that's fine. But basically, every province also is going to have their own provincial versions of the parties. So, like in British Columbia, this is my train of thought. Main sort of right-wing party is it's like the Liberal Party, if I remember right.
Okay. I know BC is a little bit more liberal than Ontario. I mean, a lot more, because Ontario is conservative as hell.
Their principal party is the principal left-wing party in BC is the NDP. Mm-hmm. And until recently, because it looks like the Liberal Party, because like the Liberal Party traditionally in British Columbia was the more right-wing party. And then before that, they had like the Social Credit Party, which is a whole other movement in Canada that I don't quite fully understand.
Yeah, I've not really understood it either. I've like heard of it, and I kind of have some weird understanding of it, but I don't know, man. It's not very well defined,
so
is my point.
Basically, the Liberal Party of BC was the right-wing party. And it has now sort of collapsed and reformed as the BC United Party, is what they are currently
BCU,
now.
I think I've heard of them.
Because they don't want... basically, they were like, people keep thinking we're liberals and we aren't liberal anymore. So they just sort of redid their image, basically. So yeah. So basically, every province is going to have their own sorts of parties. So in Ontario, if you notice, the right-wing party is the Progressive Conservatives. And that's because in the 80s and, you know, back, the federal Conservative Party was the Progressive Conservative Party for a long time. And,
that makes so much sense.
And then Brian Mulroney, who's basically Canada's version of Ronald Reagan, if that helps you think about it.
Yep.
So he basically retired, and Canada got its singular female prime minister, a lady named Kim Campbell. So she is now currently known for trolling Donald Trump on Twitter.
So we like her.
And I mean, she's still conservative. She's just, you know, a progressive conservative. Basically.
The irony is Donald Trump was super liberal. Like how long ago was it? Oh my goodness! Like
can you really pin down somebody's
I don't know if he's got all his faculties in order, but like I saw an interview of him and he was like, "Oh no, a woman wants to have an abortion. She should have access to that. Like it's not my business to tell her she can't." And then purposely votes in people who are against it. I was like, what is wrong with this guy? I feel like he's old Uncle Sal, you know, deteriorating in the background. And as he gets older, he gets crazier in the things that he says. I just feel like that's what's happening.
I think he is just is very good at saying what people want to hear. And
yeah, he's a salesman. That's why.
So I think, you know, he'll say whatever he feels like is best going to
Yep.
fit that specific scenario. So I
Be
don't
as
know.
agreeable as you
Yeah.
can. That's the goal.
I don't know if he's ever had like an actual political philosophy.
Okay, I don't think so either.
I
to be
don't think
honest.
you can really peg him as a liberal or a conservative or a leftist. I think he's just a
He's
kind of
just
a bad
following the
human
money.
being.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's just
but,
following the money or following the debt.
Yeah. So from what I understand, anyway, Kim Campbell.
Yeah.
Basically, she got in there as his successor, and there basically she got in. She was an MP in Vancouver. She basically, there's a bunch of stuff that happened that was not necessarily her fault. There was just
Okay.
sort of a shitstorm, and I mean there were clearly other things that were her fault as well. But basically, she lost her own seat, and the Progressive Conservatives collapsed. Like, not because she lost her own seat, but because if I remember correctly, they lost every seat but like 2 of them.
Wow.
So, and then basically, the Liberals held the top job for the next 2 premierships. So Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, and then the Conservative Party of Canada was born when, what was it? Something Rose. It's like the Red Rose Party or something like that. It was like
I wouldn't know.
a right-wing party out of Alberta merged with what was left over of the Progressive Conservatives.
Okay.
And then they formed what is now the Modern Conservative Party of Canada. And then
Right.
that they got, Stephen Harper out of that.
Wow.
So,
That is so convoluted, but I feel like that's kind of politics, right?
Yeah. And, Stephen Harper is a horrible human being, in my opinion.
Oh, really?
So
Okay. I mean, I don't
he's-
even know who that person is.
He
I've
was
never
the
come
prime
across him.
minister before Trudeau.
Oh, okay. So, oh wait, I know who that is now. Sorry.
Yeah, so he set up a barbaric cultural practices hotline when he was prime minister for
What?
for things like honor killings despite murder already being illegal. He
Honor killings.
Yeah. So he set up this sort of hotline so that you can call to be like, hey, the Muzzies next door are doing something I don't like. You should send police to investigate, basically.
What?
Yeah, it was basically so he just didn't like, things that weren't seen as typically Canadian but like, barbaric cultural practices. And most of those things are already illegal. So I can't kill my daughter to restore my family's honor. That's already illegal. You don't need a special hotline. 911 exists.
Wow.
But
Oh my
the
goodness.
party wasn't the Rose Party. That's a different thing. It was the Reform Party of Alberta, I believe, or just Reform Party, something like
It kind
that.
of just sounds like, oh, well, I don't like this part of your politics, and you won't let me be in your politics, or you won't agree with my politics, so I'm just going to make my own political party. And then you can compete against me because I'm going to be better than you, and then flops. That's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean,
This is sort of like the EFF in South Africa. So,
I have no knowledge of that.
oh my goodness. It's so, I don't know how to explain this well because I'm, as you know, like not super versed in politics. But the gist of it is the ANC is the ruling party, so they had the most votes, so they get the most say. And then however many votes you get, that's how much opinion power you get or voting power you get in Parliament.
I imagine
used-
it's a pretty similar system to Canada.
I think so, in a weird way, except when we go to Parliament, no one is allowed to heckle while people are talking. That is freaking bizarre. I was watching something happening in Parliament, the first time that I watched anything in Parliament, and people were literally yelling out and screaming while someone was speaking. Like
It's a very British thing. Brr,
Yeah,
brr.
that's super not allowed. Like, that does not fly in Parliament of South Africa. Like, if you do that, You get 2 warnings and then you get kicked out. So you are absolutely silent while someone else is talking. Everyone gets a turn, but you shut your mouth. So that was weird. But Julius Malema and the EFF, basically the ANC had a youth league. So it's kind of like for young people who are interested in politics, who want to get into politics.
Most parties have youth wings.
Okay, so you know what a youth league is, right?
Yeah.
So he was... when he fell under the category of a person who could identify as a youth, you know, up to the age of 26, you're a youth. So he was the leader of the youth party, and then he thought he was automatically just going to be in the ANC, and then one day he would be the president. That didn't happen, and he threw a tantrum and was like, I will make my own party. And he became the EFF.
The Maxime Bernier of
basically, yeah. Because he was
Africa.
like, well, you won't make me the president. I'm going to put myself in the position to be the president, and then you won't be able to say anything about it because I'm going to be the president. And then
I'm going to make
no
my
one
own
voted for him.
party with blackjack and hookers.
Yep. And then no one voted for him. They're like the red berets of the EFF. It's like a whole thing. You know, they're still there. They get, I think, like 4% of the vote, which, you know, is more than Chris Sky, but here we are. So that was like kind of what I was thinking. It just sounds like a lot of tantrums turned into political parties across the board. And now we have a bunch of political parties and we're all just trying to see whose views we align with. But I do appreciate that like when you say you're going to do something, especially when you say in no uncertain terms you're going to do something, you should probably do it. Or if you're going to say it, make sure you can do it before you promise you're going to do it. Because I just think that was probably the biggest mistake that Trudeau has made in his time in office.
I mean, I think there's a lot of... I think he was trying to let his good people skills do most of the heavy lifting, but then...
Because he does have
really...
good charisma. Like, he's charismatic and has good people skills.
Yeah, that's why the Conservatives have spent so much time trying to ruin his public image. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, that's really the only thing he had going for him. Like,
also, because even people who don't like him agree that he is likable.
Yeah, and like he's not his father at all. His father was the opposite. His father could get shit done, but was like one of the least likable people in politics.
Which is problematic.
I forget what it's called. There was a specific scandal with one of the first black MPs in Canadian Parliament. Oh, what was his name? Something Alexander. Lincoln Alexander. Yes.
Why does that name sound familiar?
So he was the first black Canadian to become an MP in the House of Commons. So
wow.
I think his family moved here from someplace in the Caribbean. I just found his Wikipedia page, and it was Jamaica on his mom's side and St. Vincent and the Grenadines on his dad's. So, like, but he's first generation Canadian, served in the Air Force, got elected as an MP, and there was a little scandal where he was doing something, and I can't remember what it was. Let me see if I can find. But basically, Pierre Trudeau said "fuck you" to him.
Oh.
And then he was like, "Oh no, I didn't say fuck you. I said thank you." Because like
what?
he mouthed it.
Oh.
So he went "fuck you," but didn't actually audibly voice it. You know. So
oh my goodness! Can you imagine? Well, you don't have to imagine. You can find that this happened.
So apparently, 1968 made a speech saying, "I'm not a spokesman for the Negro." Da, 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 da. And okay, so that's how he started his whole thing. He was a conservative party, like a progressive conservative candidate.
Right.
So he was, I think, basically this was probably his first speech. Then 1970, he voted in favor of the War Measures Act. Invoked by Trudeau, later felt he had erred in this decision. So basically, I think that's what it was for. So
okay.
So basically, he voted for Trudeau's War Measures Act because there was the Front de Libération du Québec. It was a Marxist paramilitary that formed in Quebec. They kidnapped the provincial labor minister, and I believe they killed him. And Like he was like they shot him, and
What?
yeah, this was in the 1970s.
Oh, okay. I mean, not
So-
that it makes it right. It just makes more sense.
No, it was just a while ago.
Yeah.
So it was what was known as the October Crisis. So this is all stuff I've learned a long time ago, and I'm just opening articles now to refresh my memory. But basically, they kidnapped the British diplomat and the Quebec labor minister, and I believe they did kill the labor minister. So Pierre Trudeau invoked the War Measures Act to try to basically tell them to
Interesting.
stop doing that.
Wow.
And yeah,
So like you need to tell people, hey, you know,
pretty
can you
sure
please
that
not
is
kill each
what
other.
Fuddle-duddle is what it was. So
Fuddle-duddle.
yeah, so the incident occurred in 1971. Trudeau was alleged to have spoken or made some unparliamentary language, causing a minor incident. He mentions the words fuddle-duddle in an ambiguous answer to questions about what he may or may not have said in Parliament. But it was, these other MPs, Alexander being one of them, said that Trudeau had mouthed "fuck off," but he was like, it wasn't "fuck off," it was "fuddle-duddle." It's like, what the fuck does "fuddle-duddle" mean?
That's crazy. But also, like, why would you say that? That it doesn't, in the context, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Not having a chat with your mate.
But I thought it was very funny.
The whole situation is funny. Like, I don't even, like, what? These are grown men. Like,
Yeah.
adults with bank accounts.
I mean, not just adults with bank accounts, but the Prime Minister
Like, exactly.
and MPs. So,
Pretty much the people that make all your decisions.
yeah.
That's why it's funny. Like, how ridiculous. How far down the rabbit hole are we at this point, you know?
Yeah, I don't even remember what it was in reference for. It might not have been the October Crisis thing at all then. But
I have no
yeah.
idea. 'Cause-
Trudeau has also, like, the current Trudeau has also said, like, yeah, I don't think my dad said fuddle-duddle.
He also, like, I feel like Justin Trudeau would have a little bit more of an understanding of what kind of things his father would say.
I mean, he's also been accused of doing something similar, calling another MP a piece of shit.
I mean, who was it? Who did he call a piece of shit? Because they might have deserved it.
Peter Kent, who is the Conservative Environmental Minister. But, I mean, a Conservative Environmental Minister is probably not a very good environmental minister.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like, what was his pride and joy removing the wind farms in Alberta? Like,
Maybe.
that
That
maybe.
sounds like something they'd like.
Yeah, so, like, yeah, I would agree. He probably is a piece of shit. Because somebody who behaves like that, in my opinion, is a piece of shit. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Like, the world is literally on fire.
Yeah.
We need to stop doing the things. Like, when we needed resources to build certain things, and when we didn't have the technology, yeah, that was the time, you know, to live off the land and do what you could. But we've passed that now. So let's figure out how to use less stuff that's literally killing the planet. Anyway, I could go on for hours about that, because, like, what are we doing, actually? Like,
Very little.
Oh, exactly. That is exactly it. Like, there's no corporate responsibility. So, you know.
Well, they've put in a lot of effort to specifically not have us have any.
Well,
like,
that's
they,
it, right?
They specifically, carbon footprint is sort of like a corporate effort to sort of push any of the responsibility onto individual consumers, whereas then they are perfectly, like, they don't have to have any responsibility if it's been put onto the people who are buying their products. They can just go about making their products.